How about a free book? This free workbook is a tutorial for changing your mind to change your life. From six-time award-winning author and accredited specialist Scott Spackey, also going by Krishnanand. Learn about spiritual, psychological, anxiety, depression, addiction, and more. Change your mind and change your life. Free download at life-mind.com. That's life-mind.com.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
Hi, Barb.
How you doing, Chloe?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I have a couple thoughts to begin with. I think Randy should be here with us too. He should be joining any minute.
There's somebody named Red here. Is that Randy?
Yeah. Hey, Randy. Jai Shiradi, everybody. Radhe Radhe. Glory to the essence of divine love. That's the kind of Sanskrit greeting I like to give. Couple thoughts. One, I'm considering starting a new project, and I need you guys to look out for me. I did do a little bit of research. So I am now reading, Barb knows a little bit about this. And I just talked about it the other day. So I started, Barb. I started reading. Okay, so I do a little research to be able to think about considering doing a different project. That's a complete departure from what I normally do because it's just about a money-making commercialized thing. And so I looked up what is the most popular book genre in the world, and it's romance novels. The crap you see at the paperback wire checkout stand, that's what sells billions of copies around the world. They're garbage, okay? And yes, Shades of Grey, the erotic ones, do very well too. So I thought, you know what? Why not? I mean, how hard can that be for me? I can write something, I can turn one of those out in a couple of weeks. So since I know nothing about them, never read one, and would not, I decided to do some research. I'm now reading, I started one last night, by Sylvia Day, who is one of the biggest romance novelists in the world. Been around for a long time, I guess. Sylvia Day. Never heard of her before yesterday when I went to the library and asked about it. And I chose this one because it is a fallen angel that's going to meet up with some guy, some mortal planetary guy, and they're going to have this like romance. I'm like, okay, so it's a little bit supernatural, so I'll go into that. It's got vampires, all kinds of shit. Okay, I gotta tell you. So my favor is this. Please look after me. If I get really weird and stupid by associating with this kind of, if I get dumb, then please tell me so, because I won't know until it's so. I feel confident that I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Do people get dumb because they watch reality TV and associate with dumb things, or do they get dumb because of those things? Do dumb people do it, or do they get dumb because of it? I don't know. Chicken or the egg. So please look out for me. And I've got to tell you, I'm about 3 chapters into this little book. It's pretty simple. But I tell you, she's a good writer. She's a very good writer. Very good command articulation and good expression. Very good, talented, skilled writer. I got to tell her that. I got to give you that. The story is basically for kids to me. It's like for teenagers. Vampires and and I haven't seen any erotic stuff yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Anyway, so I'm going to sample that and see how they do this. It's a formula. So look out for me, because if I get dumb, somebody's got to reel me in and say, "Stop, Krishan, don't." We got to rescue you. All right, chicken or the egg.
Okay.
Now, a second quick thing. I'd like to. Neither one of you are going to like this. All right. But I wanted to acknowledge, and I have for a long time, that Chloe designs and works on all these emails that go out, and she does a beautiful job. She volunteers her time as a full-time mother to a young, what is Claire, 2?
She's 3.5.
3.5. And I think she does a phenomenal job. Those emails look great. All I do is write the copy, and she and I have got a little system now. She knows that we both know that I cannot do anything. If I do anything, all I do is screw it up. I've screwed up the system, the server, all kinds of stuff by some getting involved. So I just write the copy and I send it over, and she's the one that constructs them and makes them nice and does a beautiful job. And I just want to thank you for that. We all benefit from it. And of course, I want to thanks to Barb too, because I got a little package in the mail the other day, which was a box full of of mint chocolate cookies that she made at her bake sale for her church. And apparently they did a fundraising, raised like what, 30 grand for your church?
$33,000 was the gross.
Cookies, from
Wow.
cookies, okay? A whole bunch of women out there make it, but I'll tell you, if you had these cookies, you'd know why. They're little chocolate drops with mint Hershey Kisses on the top, and I'd show you one, but I ate them.
They're all gone.
I lost one yesterday, and I could not, and I tried to make them last. Now, I have one more brief thought to share. I said some time ago that I was joking, being sarcastic, of course, about entering an age of utopia, where this amazing time to live because everything is solvable now through a prescription or an app. How do you know? Just look at TV. Everything on TV tells you anything that's wrong with anything wrong in your life at all can be solved by a prescription or an app. It's everybody's life is happy. And so I said that I want to come reincarnate as somebody in a prescription ad because they're all happy, surrounded by loved ones. They're all well adjusted. Whatever's wrong with them, they seem to be managing very well. So I want to reincarnate as somebody from a prescription ad app, from a prescription ad. This is the illusions that we get cast upon us. Again, the chicken or the egg. Does reality, TV, and bad content make people stupid, or do stupid people make these things? I think it's both. We've got to be careful. The association with these things. And so a new one that I saw is, I mean, I literally shudder when I get these things. Commercial that I saw, I'm watching, I got a little brief little Cinemax kind of thing because Brandon's sharing a little show called Band of Brothers with me. So it's intense. And this advertisement comes up and it's about an app for therapy. Okay? Listen, I work my ass off to counsel people and advise them and save their lives. It's not easy. I invested my life into this to be careful and responsible, to help people responsibly. And it's a sensitive job. And it is heartbreaking, heart-rendering many times. I was honored to do it and still am. And the terror is that an app for therapy. Yes, part of it is you can hire a therapist through the app. And I can tell you from experience that the people associated with these things are crap. They're making things way worse, not any better. And it's terrifying. People don't know what they don't know. They believe what they're fed. I'm kind of proud and satisfied that my videos and content get very few views because that's evidence that I know what I'm doing. Because nothing good makes it out there. It's all crap. And then again, I literally am scrolling down and I see 1.4 million views on it. I'm like, and it's something, literally one of them, and I got a picture of it on my phone because I took a picture. I was going to send it to one for as a joke. It's a 1 minute video, 1 minute and 30-second video on how to upend your canoe if you tip over. And it has 3 million views. Okay? Who is doing this? Who's encouraging this? Somebody's So this is what we're up against. Okay, if I'm a canoeer, then I'm going to look at that. But I don't think there's 3 million people out there that are canoeing. Okay, they're not. It's got 3 million views. And it's a picture of a guy. I'd show it to you on my phone. Picture of a guy. Anyway, this is what we're up against. Therapy apps that you can get help for mental health through an app. And look, I'm joking, I'm sarcastic, but honestly, what you don't see is what I'm feeling is a rage and sorrow within. I mean, literally, when I say that out loud, that there's an app that people are using. And if you look at the commercial, it's a good thing. It's not a desperate attempt. It's not a better than nothing thing. This is what you want. And of course, they're showing you happy and well adjusted, and mothers and daughters smiling and look, oh my God, our lives are getting saved. The hardest part of my career as a counselor, they say you get jaded after a while. You hit burnout. And indeed, seeing how awful people can be to each other, mostly parents to kids, what I saw, was very distressing and hard to handle after a while. But the worst part of it was not that. It's the client after client after client. My entire career was founded on people that got screwed over and made so much worse by psychiatrists and doctors and therapists that came to me and finally got something good and healthy because I had my boots on the ground. We're in the trenches and doing it. And that is what made me had to get out. What burnout was for me was not people being awful. People being awful are just people that are lost and need help. All of them. The worst people that I would meet. I get to know them like, you know what? I can see whether this way. It's not good, but they didn't just decide to be this way. They became this way. They were shaped and modeled and conditioned. The evil part that burned me out was the uncaring, negligence, and distortion of the professional help that they would get that just ruined them. Medication addictions and side effects may include suicide. Oh my God. If that isn't a red flag, anyway, let's move on. This feeds into the underground stream. What's true and what's not. What we're going to talk about today is the lost years of Jesus. Notice I said Jesus, not Yeshua, as I usually do, because we're talking about the more fictional account. We're going to be talking about the true account. So the lost years are Jesus, they're lost to Jesus. They're not lost for Yeshua. I'm going to begin with a small passage from within the portal describing the underground stream again. I read this last week when we talked about the parallels between Krishna and Christ, which are undeniable and beautiful. And I'm going to read a different section this week because I think understanding the underground stream, because what I'm going to share with you today, I rarely talk about the lost years. I rarely talk about it because it can be controversial, hard for Westerners in particular to process. And we live in a country that's very judgmental, and I don't want to get crucified. So I try to stay apolitical and a-religious and not involved. I try to not choose any sides. I want to encourage everyone to seek the truth and not love or hate anything as a result of that, but just be indifferent. So I rarely get to talk about these subjects. And of course, like I talk about with the YouTube stuff that's out there, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. You're like, who came up with this? I mean, I see stuff that they're literally, one again was something about somebody, I can't remember who it was, dead at 72. And I was going to click on it. And I'm like, that is probably complete crap. And it was like, I don't know, Martin Scorsese or something, right? And sure enough, I Google separately, Martin Scorsese, he's alive and well. And I go back and I'm thinking I must have read it wrong. The YouTube blurb on the bottom of it literally says dead at 72. Complete, absolute lie. And listen, for you and I and intelligent people, we look at that and think that's just dumb. There's a whole bunch of people out there that click on that and believe it. Whole bunch. So the underground stream, what I'll share with you today is documented. How do we know about the 18 missing years? And what I never share, other than privately, to people who really want to know it, is some alternative events after the crucifixion. That one I don't talk about because many people cannot handle it. It's just too different. And I'm like, you know what? Gloves are off. I'm doing what I want now. I don't care. I'm just going to put it all out. Nobody watches me anyway. I don't matter. So how do we know these things to be true and historical? The underground stream. Yes, I can back up everything that I'm saying. And let me, again, share with you a little bit about the underground stream, because it's just easier to turn to the book for this than explain it all again. The underground stream is a term used within the esoteric and occult cultures and societies. It is a euphemism for the Akashic records. Akash means space in Sanskrit, and this celestial space refers to the dimension where knowledge and truth are stored. Most of the knowledge within the Akash is available here in the realm of the physical world too. But did you know, and I do these little sidebars to give you just to kind of show you how these things work. as I explain what it is, I'm giving you examples, little bullet points. But did you know the Torah, Old Testament Bible, is an encoded formula for spiritual consciousness? Many underground stream sailors accept that the long list of names in the Torah, so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so, which goes on for pages. Oh my God. And you're looking at this going like, who would include this here? And I'm telling you why. It's not a genealogical list of the Jewish race, but a mystical formula for instructions to attain spiritual power and consciousness. If you know how to recite it properly, like Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton, then it is a mystical formula for activating spiritual consciousness. So it's not just a list of names. It's also that the Kabbalah's tree of life, with its pictorial correspondence of the tarot deck, alchemy, 7 stages of philosopher's stone, Kundalini Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga's 8 branches, which are identical to the Buddha's eightfold path, are all teaching the same thing in different terms. The Kriya Yoga, the path popularized and brought to America in the 40s and 50s by Paramahansa Yogananda's Self-Realization Fellowship, SRF, is a part of the Kundalini Yoga blended with Bhakti Yoga. The true origins of religions and spiritual paths are available if you know where and how to look for them. Did you know that the Latin word occult means hidden in plain view? The underground stream refers to the actual true history, origins, and machinations of humanity, particularly pertaining to religion and spirituality, before they were altered and changed by organized religion and politically motivated historians. It has always been there, but has gone underground to avoid zealous persecution of the truths. Did you know that the tarot is a pictorial version of Kabbalah's tree of life, developed by so Kabbalists could avoid persecution in the 1400s? The pictorial tree of life was also created so that it illustrates, so that illiterates could study and practice the path of Judaic mysticism. That's what the tarot is actually for. Conventional history taught in schools taught me the basics of the Inquisition and the witch trials. But underground stream history reveals a Holocaust, persecution of women by religious zealots, deliberately invented and sustained by an organized religion for the single goal of monopolizing their religion by systematically erasing others from history. That is the papal bull. Ad exeparanda, issued on May 15, 1252 by Pope Innocent IV, is what kicked off the Spanish Inquisition, a genocide that lasted for 200 years and exterminated over 32,000 people. The message was clear: join us or else. And don't just die horribly and torturously. Now, the persecution of Jews and women and the plight of Native Americans and Black lives are politically correct, woke topics. But these and others have been a part of the underground stream all along. Let me jump forward a little bit. As I tunneled through the ancient rabbit holes, I learned the true aspects of Abrahamic scriptures and the fictionalized reinventions of them, working backward. Did you know? Oh, wait, I'm going to skip that part. Sorry. When we underground stream sailors get together, we don't argue over the true identities of Moses or Jesus. We all know that their true names were Akhenaten and Yeshua. We don't debate over where Yeshua was for those mysterious 18 years unaccounted for in the New Testament. True initiates know of this, and we chat casually about it. And I'm serious, I've been all over the world. When we get together, it's not a big deal. We just talk about it. The more I studied, the more I found. Seeking ye shall find, knocking it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7. As I dug deep into the religious rabbit holes, I saw the beauty existing well below the surface. I found God down there, not the business-oriented, organized religion God of zealots and snake oil salesmen, but the God at the core of the truth. With deductive reasoning, I decided the truth of God and spirituality would most likely be found at its source. What came first? Where did the God concept originate? I decided to work backward, tracing the trail of religious history to find its origin, to authenticate it. If the God concept is genuine, then his source must be eternal and predate humanity. Deductive reasoning led me to conclude that if I could find the original source into the rabbit hole, I'd find the truth. As I tunneled through ancient rabbit holes, I learned the true aspects of the Abrahamic scriptures and the fictionalized and reinventions of them, working backward. Did you know that the prayer closing Amen means so be it? And it is a derivative of Sanskrit's Om, which represents the primordial sound of cosmic creation. Torah, Old Testament Genesis, begins with, in the beginning was the word, but yet never says what the word is. The word is Om, pronounced Aum. We all use it, don't we? Above ground stream. True spiritual knowledge and formula are accessible in both the underground and above ground stream. Spiritual scriptures and practices have been produced and revealed in the world since time immemorial. Over time, they often get convoluted and misinterpreted until they are mere shadows of what they were originally. I mean, the King James Version of the Bible is a far cry from the original version Hebrew and Aramaic. A far cry. Did you know that the Knights Templar discovered original Jewish and Christian texts contained the real historical accounts of Christianity, which conflicted with Catholic accounts? The reason Pope Innocent II gave them unrestricted passage and immunity from taxes was to keep them quiet about what they had found. Now, the underground stream, where the true knowledge is stored. And again, the underground sailors, I refer to them, the mystics and spiritualists throughout the world that aren't too organized. But we all belong to, you could say, a brotherhood, a spiritual family. We feel that we are somewhat guardians to preserve and protect the truths so that someday they can be accessed again when the world calms down and grows up. There's evidence of this, which I give again in the end of the book here with prophecy. As I went to Egypt to research Akhenaten, who is the historical Moses, who was erased from history, literally buried and erased, deliberately erased from history. The entire, if you said his name, it was penalty of death. And over time, he was virtually forgotten. And yet underground stream sailors preserved his legacy, him and Nefertiti. And it was converted into the Old Testament. The story of Moses. Mose in the ancient Egyptian language means son, favored son. It was a nickname because you couldn't say Akhenaten. So they referred to him as Mose. Now, the archaeological dig have found the city of Atenatan. They found what happened. He's not removed from history. It has been discovered. King Tut was his son, for God's sakes. How many people even know this? Everyone knows King Tut. How many people know who his father was and that his mother was Nefertiti? Well, not technically. That's another story. Not today. So what I'm sharing with you today with the 18 missing years has never been lost. It was deliberately covered up, buried, to prevent people from knowing the truth. Why is beyond me? Because it does not in any way take away from the Christ message or story at all. What it does do is it potentially marginalizes and disempowers the organized church that was built upon it. But it does not in any way diminish Yeshua's message, teachings, or life. Every saint, every divine personality, everything they do is grace. When they eat and drink, when they take a walk, when they scratch their forehead, whatever they do, it is grace. It is a miracle. It is pure, undivided, divine love. So again, the truth, knowing this, can sometimes be risky for people because an abrupt shift, paradigm shifts in consciousness can be harmful for some. Some people just can't handle it. I mean, in a crude example, I've done a lot of LSD in my life. I never once had a bad trip. I can't even imagine having a bad trip. That's just not even feasible to me. And I knew other people that could not possibly have a good one. There was a very consistent difference between us. They were kind of not that stable to begin with. They couldn't grasp. They could not handle the abrupt paradigm shift in that consciousness. There's too big of a gap to cover. And in this way, true knowledge and true history can do that for some people. They can't handle it. So that's again why I've been cautious and careful. Why initiates and mystics within the underground stream have been cautious. One, to avoid persecution, and two, to protect those who can't handle it. It's not about guarding the secrets and keeping it private. It's not. Initiations was about qualifying, making sure people could handle it. If you could handle the initiation that the temples were doing, then you could handle the truth, because the initiations were pretty tough, pretty weird. So let me share something with you. The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ by Nikolai Natovich. This book has been around since the last turn of the century. He wrote it in 1903, 1910, something like that. Okay? Been around a long time. It's a very thin book. It's a very small book. And it is pretty cool. Basically, Natovich, a Russian guy, was a businessman traveling, coincidentally, through parts of India and Asia. Some weird circumstances occurred and caused him to get kind of lost and sidetracked. These small chain of events led him to some discoveries. He came across things. This is one of the first published accounts of these lost years. It's been around since the turn of the last century, and you probably never heard of it. Again, Underground Stream Sailors, we all know his name. We know, we can almost quote it, right? It's casual for us. And yet, the mainstream public, here it is in a book, which you can get anywhere. You type it in, you'll find it. It's like $3 probably. It's pretty thin and cheap. Been around all this time. This guy accidentally came upon, you could say, a tribe in India, a sect that knew all about Yeshua because he was there. And they had it documented. Not after the fact. It's been a part of their history the entire time. One of the things I love about India and Asia is that the historical documentation of things is not speculation. They've always been very, very careful and very good. It's not controversial to them. They write things down as they happened. And it just wasn't a big deal for them, especially sacred and holy matters. Because whenever they recognized something that was significant spiritually, they documented it. They weren't curious about or wondering if someone was a saint or not. They recognized them, they knew it, and they documented it. They followed them. They didn't lose track of them for 18 years, I can tell you that, ever, or even a day. To this day, gurus, sages, and saints in India. It's going to sound silly and it's hard to understand to your common Western mind, I suppose. Some of the sweetest moments of my life. When I was in India at the ashram, my guru would have lunch. Sometimes he would do this in the open, in the dining area, in his little dining area right in his home. And we could all gather around and hang out with him. He would just eat. We would just watch. Doe-eyed and just in absolute love that we're watching a divine person eat We were very happy to just watch him eat. That's it. That's all. Anything they do is absolute grace. Wouldn't matter what it is. Because in India, they've always known this, and they've always honored. Doesn't matter what a saint does. Same name, Crowley, Bob, or all the others. Whatever they're doing, it's documented, it's adored, it's admired, it's looked at as an absolute sacred, cherished moment. This is easy to understand the Christian mind. No matter what Jesus was doing, if you were there, wouldn't you want to see him do it? Wouldn't you just watch and be in awe? Even if you're just taking a walk or having a snack, combing his hair, it doesn't matter. Whatever he's doing, you'd be like, oh my God, look at what I'm looking at, right? You'd be in tears. I'm looking at the personification of God having a snack. Oh my God. Yes, you would watch, and you would be in rapture, absolute bliss. When Ram Dass, who was Richard Alpert at the time, first met Neem Karoli Baba, just before he met him, he's walking, they're walking up these hills, these mountains to get to the ashram. And he's with this surfer kid from Laguna Beach that had been in India for a while, was already devoted to Neem Karoli Baba. But this kid was a surfer from Laguna Beach, okay? Blonde, long hair. He ended up becoming the master at the ashram that's near me, near in Santa Cruz. Brilliant. He's called the Silent Monk because he took a vow of silence. He started off as a surfer kid from Laguna Beach. And when Richard Alpert is in India seeking answers and meets this Laguna Beach surfer kid, and they're walking towards him. They're walking up to the ashram. The closer they get, the surfer kid just gets more and more quiet and eventually stops talking altogether. And then eventually just starts sobbing and weeping and is in an absolute ecstasy because he's on the boundary of his guru's ashram. He's that close. And all he can do is think about love. He's so absorbed and immersed in ecstasy because he's in the presence of divine love, personification. So no matter what they do. So again, where Yeshua was for 18 years was very well documented and preserved to this day. He was recognized as a divine personality right away when he was in India. So let's back up. So I'm giving away the story a little bit. His parents were Yusuf, not Joseph, that name didn't exist then, and Marie. That's how you would have said it back then. And Yeshua was their child's name. They began as a very poor family when he was born, but eventually they were pretty okay. They stabilized and made a good life for themselves. Yes, Yusuf was a carpenter, I guess, and he made a good living. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't poor. Back then, India was the place to go to university. It was the epicenter for knowledge. The best universities and colleges were in India, and everyone knew that. So if you had the money, kind of like today, you send your kids to college. I mean, it's as much of a status thing as it is anything else these days. It is a way of showing with like your car and anything else, like, look who I am, look what I can do. This is where we are. I'm someone to be reckoned with. So if you had the money and resources, you sent your kids to college in India. That's what you did. And that's what Yusuf and Mehdi went to do, to send their son, Yeshua, to college to get educated. But Yeshua was a bit of a rogue adventurer. He liked doing things his own way. So when they sent him to college, a little bit of money, he was all secured, his tuition was paid, housing was arranged, and all that kind of stuff, like you do today. And when they sent him, but of course, then you had to walk or take a donkey or something, long way. When they sent him, Yeshua, being something of a rogue, independent, free person, free spirit, was like, yeah, you know what? I'll get there when I get there. I'm going to do some other things along the way. Who of us wouldn't do that? Got to travel across the country to go to college, whatever. Why not go sightseeing, right? Why not see some stuff? Why not have some adventures? Now, keep in mind, this is a divine personality. He may be acting like a human, pretending to be one, but he's not. So whatever he's doing is divine. It is grace. But they go through these actions to provide us with a story that we can associate with, because that's some of the greatest grace of all, to simply meditate on and know and associate with their stories. So on his way to India, he was in Persia. But the Zoroastrians were already established and had been for a long time. He spent time with them, studying with them, living amongst them. How long? That's debatable. A few months, a year maybe, a brief time. It would be a mistake to consider, as I tell you these visits and places that he went to and who he associated with, it seems that this is a young man learning and gaining knowledge from these different cultures and different paths of spirituality and religion. I don't see it that way because I accept Yeshua as a divine personality. The Buddha had a guru too. Most all of them have a teacher and sample and experience different paths, different practices. They do this partly because it gives us some credibility. It's what we can accept humans would do. So he spent time with the Zoroastrians. And my understanding is that this was his giving his thumbs up, rubber stamp of approval on this. Like, this is a good philosophy. This is okay. But then he left, which is his way of saying, but it ain't good enough. Again, it's the same as the Buddha spent time in the forest with the sannyasis and the renunciates, and eventually went on his own. They said to him, "You've learned everything we got from you, and you passed us." So he said, "I got to go do it on my own. I got to go. I got to go get more." So once Yeshua learned what the Zoroastrians were doing, he basically approved of them and then moved on. Before he went to college in India, he became involved with some yogis, some Sanatana Dharmists involved with the Kriya Yoga and the Bhakti Yoga paths. Not Ashtanga so much, but different paths of yoga. Certainly, some of it was bhakti or devotionally based. Too much of Yeshua's teachings and mission is directly synonymous with the bhakti path of love and surrender. He spent a lot of time there. The story goes that eventually he kind of moved on to go to college because he was going to get in so-called trouble. He was supposed to go to college, supposed to go straight to university. And eventually his parents went like, "Hey, why aren't you, we pay a lot of money for this. Why aren't you there?" Okay. So loud word, we eventually catch up to him. There's a little bit of gray areas here. He spent time with the yogis and ashrams, learning the paths of yoga and meditation of Sanatana Dharma, learning trance-like samadhi states of consciousness, learning how to do it, to control all bodily needs and separate mind from body completely. Trance-like meditations, profound, takes many people all their life and many lifetimes to be able to master even a part of. And he did this in a couple of years. Mastered it. Like the Buddha had done, he mastered it. To please and be respectful to his parents and what he was sent there for, he did do some time in college. But it was not very committed. First of all, he's a divine personality. They can't teach him anything. So he doesn't really need to be there at all. He's going through the motions. He's being respectful. He's mastering everything the professor and everything teach him, and he's basically turned them on their ear, just like he did with the rabbis back in the synagogue back in Egypt, when he set them right. And he doesn't just in a condescending way. He's like, yeah, that's true, but, and then he adds more. And eventually the rabbis were like, oh my God, he's like the personification of scripture. He knows it all. Similarly with college, same kind of thing. He barely went to classes. We spent way more time in the ashram with the yogis, and yet he was acing his classes. Nobody saw him study, nobody saw him doing anything, and yet he was killing it, right? That is the hallmark of divine personalities. My own guru, Kripalu, same thing. He mastered the 4 different versions of Sanskrit, which many people consider their entire lives and never mastered the 4th one. He did this in a couple of years in his youth, and no one even saw him study. Matter of fact, he was always going out getting all the kids to stop studying and go play, climb trees. My guru Kripalu, when he was a child, was famous for climbing trees. A lot of pictures of him now in trees. He was a troublemaker. He said, forget studying. Come on, let's go play. And these kids, they needed to study. But Kripalu, he knew it all. He was acing it, getting killer grades, just acing everything. Similarly with Yeshua, he went to class here and there, but he didn't need to. He was acing it and killing it, didn't need to even be there. Nobody even saw him study or doing anything. It just was easy for him. So he spent way more time and had a much more enjoyable time in the ashrams with the yogis and the masters. He liked his time there. He was mastering their paths of yoga easily and quickly, and they were floored and blown away. And again, they recognized right away, hey, this isn't some normal kid here. We got something going on here. They suspected they had a divine personality, a guru, a master on their hands. They suspected it. Yet, him being from the what was then called the West, that didn't add up. Sanatan Dharmas always assumed that if it's going to be a saint, a divine personality is going to descend, it's going to be within India. And that's generally the case. And here's this Westerner from Bethlehem, Jerusalem, that is quite possibly, they're seeing all the evidence. This is divine personality. He knows everything. He's omniscient. He's a master at everything. He's got all the symptoms and signs of being a divine personality. Eventually, he's getting in trouble because he's not going to class anymore. He's spending all of his time in the ashrams. And eventually says basically to the professor and to his family, gets word to his family, yeah, you know what? I'm not going. I'm done with that. I'm living a spiritual life. And then listen, we hear it all the time. College, especially in the 60s, right? College kids went to college, parents paid all this money. What they end up doing? Dropping ass and going to the Haight-Ashbury, right? Doing their own thing. Jack Kerouac, on the road, man. Traveled around the country and wrote on the road. Whole counterculture began there. So what Yeshua was doing was pretty new at the time, but pretty common. Blowing off school and having a good time doing what he felt was meaningful and deep to him. Mastering the yoga paths. And similar to the Buddha, when Siddhartha mastered the yoga paths in the forests with the yogis, eventually his yogi master went to him and said, Siddhartha, you surpassed us. We can't teach you anything more. We've given you everything we know, and you surpassed that. We don't have anything else to give you. So the Buddha went on his own and sat beneath the Bodhi tree and had his epiphany. Yeshua had a similar situation. He mastered everything they had and was trying to move on. The difference is they didn't want to believe. The yogis that he was associated with begged him to stay because they loved him. They just wanted him to be there. However, there were another faction of yogis that did not like him because he was taking their philosophy and elevating it, expanding it, going well beyond them. And basically, as the yogis were very committed to the disciplines and the sacrifices and the renunciations. And here was this Yeshua mastering everything they did and basically saying like, yeah, well, you don't have to do all that. That's too extreme. It's too intense. And it's not serving you. You're making it more about discipline than just being one with your soul and loving God. You're missing the point. And that was controversial. Some of the yogi masters at the ashrams did not like him because they thought he was a troublemaker. He was an agitator. And some of them actually were kind of asking him to leave and wanted him to go away. Because not only was he contradicting them, but he was right. And he was gaining a lot of followers and blowing them away. And he wasn't trying to cause any trouble, he just teaching the truths. So half of them wanted him to stay, and some of them wanted him to go. Yeshua chose to leave because he had a different mission. And he told his teachers and gurus there, I've got something I've got to do. I've got to take the teachings of God to my people because they don't have this. They don't have meditation. They don't have the paths of transcendence. They don't have these skills. They don't have this knowledge. Again, I don't feel as a divine person that he needed to go to India to get this. Saints go through the motions. So because at that time, when he comes back, again, right away, we're going to say, well, how do you know all this? Well, I was there. Got the credentials. I got the graduation. I got the diploma. I can prove it to you. Credibility. So he decides to leave and return to his home digs, Egypt and Jerusalem and Israel, and bring the knowledge of transcendent meditations and connecting with God to his own people who didn't have it, who had the Roman thing and the Greek thing and the polytheism and the Egypt thing, and they had the emerging, somewhat established Judaic thing, which was all about almightiness and thou shalt this and thou shalt not that. He wanted to give them more, much more, something sweeter, something more personal, something more loving. So he had a mission. So he left. Now, the yogis and masters that he associated with while he was in India, again, recognized he was a saint, and they documented all this. And he was preserved. Not just him, but anybody that they felt was worthwhile, that was holy and sacred and saintly. They documented, wrote it down, detailed, stored it away, and preserved it. And it's there to this day. When Nitovich came across in his journeys through India, was the place where they're stored at, and saw them. And he went and wrote this book. But guess what, people? Holy shit. Not only was Jesus in India, but it's written down in detail, and it's not just some story. Many of these people didn't even know. They don't even believe in it. They don't know anything about the Abrahamic religion and Christian religion. So they're not doing it for some kind of profit. As a matter of fact, if you go there and try to ask for it, they will pretend like they don't even know what you're talking about. To this day, if you make it to where this ashram is in India and knock on the door and get somebody there, which you can, they greet you like this. They're kind of like, oh, yeah, we heard all about that. We get it all the time. People coming here and knocking on the door and asking to see the proof of Christ and all this. It's just a myth. It's back there, okay? Again, there's documentaries even to this day that have been filmed that show this. They're not giving it up. And it's not because they're hoarding it. They're protecting it. They know how dumb and dangerous the Western religious mind can be. They don't want nothing to do with it. So they stay in the background. Again, underground stream. They're not hoarding it. They're protecting it. And it's there for anybody, I guess, if they want to truly see if they're qualified. But you can't just go knock on the door and say, hey, I'm a tourist. I got my phone, my video phone, my camera on my phone. Please let me in so I can see it. It's not that simple. So all this was documented at the time and was sacred when it occurred and stored to where it is today. Well, it has moved twice. It's been relocated twice within the same region, but it's been relocated to preserve and protect it. let's get back to the main story, main timeline. Yeshua, when he left India to bring the good word to his people and begin his mission, he was about 31 at the time. 28 at the time, which again is a pivotal age. And on his way, he spent some time with the Essenes. The Essenes were a very strange group. These are renunciates, Abrahamic renunciates. So they were Western religions, and they also had yoga teachings. And there was a kind of a blend between yoga practices and Western religion practices. The Essenes were a sect that many people did not like. They thought they were very strange, and they're kind of ostracized. And people were like, "Yeah, the Essenes, man, don't go around them. They're some crazy guys live in the forest. They live in the desert. They live in the desert." And the Essenes, one of their practices was to copy the scriptures nonstop, to write them out. This was like a meditation. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls, which you've heard about, those were made by the Essenes. The Dead Sea Scrolls are little containers of Judaic scriptures, and they're some of the earliest ever found. And they're complete because the Essenes, again, part of their practice to develop themselves spiritually was to write these things nonstop. As you write them, of course, you're taking it in. So it's improving you. You're building a relationship. And as I mentioned, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. It's not just a genealogy list. It is a form of meditation, a practice to be used for consciousness shift. So the Essenes were renunciates that lived in the desert. And one of their main things was that they copied the scriptures nonstop, all the time, and buried them. And again, why they did it isn't a big mystery. They did it because it was a form of meditation, a form of study, and a form of concentration. Yeshua spent a brief time with them on his way back from India, back to Jerusalem. The brief time he was there, which is, I think, maybe a year or so, I'd have to look at my notes, and I don't remember exactly. Once again, the majority of the Essenes that were there, and there are quite a few of them, and there were renunciates again. I think it was all men, no women were allowed, and he was expanding their knowledge to the point where many of the Essenes were like, you know what? Screw this. This guy is who we need to be with. This guy knows the stuff. He's taken all this that we know to be true, and he's elevated again. And so let's just follow him. His first disciples and apostles were Essenes, and they left the Essenes to be with him. He reluctantly allowed them. Reluctantly, because he wasn't really looking for followers, so to speak, at that time. He was going to begin his mission, but hadn't officially started it yet. But several of the Essenes are his original first followers and apostle disciples. They insisted. And it wasn't, screw you, we're going anyway. It was, Master, we love you. We don't care what you say or where you go. We want to walk in your footsteps. Literally, we want to worship where your feet touch the ground. That, again, is not some random thing that I'm saying. In India, we honor our guru, especially the feet, and literally where they walk. As Ram's brother, I can't think of his name all of a sudden, when he followed Ram into the forest, he wouldn't walk where Ram or Sita walked because he wasn't worthy of stepping in their footprints. So some of the Essenes insisted, we're going with you. We're just going to follow you. We don't care if you say yes or no. We cannot be separated from you. We can't do it. So we're following you. he leaves the Essenes and has, and again, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared. His time, there's a name for it. Barb, maybe you'll know. Where he spends the time in the forest, and this is when he begins to launch his mission. And again, as the Buddha spent 49 days underneath the Bodhi tree, Muhammad later on would spend about 49 days in a cave, and Yeshua spent about 49 days in the desert, connecting with God to begin his mission. This is not coincidence. They don't need to do this. They do it for us, because what divine personalities do as the personification of God and personification of divine truth and knowledge, they live the example. They don't contradict what's in divine scriptures or divine truths. They embody it and they demonstrate it. No, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, in my opinion, did not need to go sit beneath a tree for 49 days or nights to become enlightened, any more than Yeshua did. They do this because it conforms to the formula that we are taught in scriptures. Because we're stupid humans and we need some evidence. We need something that's consistent and supports itself. So, like all the others, he spent his 49 days in the desert. Again, I can't think of the name of it that's in the canonized Bible. Barb, do you know the name of that?
No.
It's in my book, and I don't want to go look for it right now, but there is a canonized name for his time in it. This is a very pivotal moment. Again, same with the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree. This is the moment in his story that is documented. This is where his mission begins, is when he spends his time, these 49 days in the desert, and communes with God, and basically this, and then the next day is when he begins his mission. Hold on one second.
Was it the temptation of Christ?
No, that comes towards the crucifixion.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I'm not going to look. And again, this is a very common thing. The fact that I can't do the name is embarrassing. And again, it's just a brain injury kind of thing that I can't always draw from. I mean, I know this event and the name of it like the back of my hand typically, except when I need it. Chloe, you're finding it, aren't you? I know you'll get it. Yeah, it's again after he left the Essene, but don't type in the Essene because again, scripture won't know that. They won't talk, they'll know, they don't talk about it. His time with the Essenes was very well documented too. Very well done. And again, the Catholic Church fully knows this, and nobody really, there's not much controversy about his time with the Essenes or whether he did so or not. Some people don't like it and don't want to believe it, but there's not much controversy, even to true Christian, about his time with the Essenes. That's pretty well documented. So again, did you find it, the name of that event? There's Massacre of the Innocents when he was born. Then there's the Temptation, which is just before the crucifixion, just before the Passion, and then there's this time. It's again, it is the pivotal event. It is the moment you could say decides, but again, everything is predetermined and predestined. Everything is already etched. He is the personification of God, so it's already been predetermined. He's going through these motions for us so that we have something to associate with. So he decided to start his mission. From there, he goes and sees John the Baptist, which is his cousin. The emotions always come up when I get to just the beautiful things. Because I love the part of the story where he goes meet John the Baptist, which is his cousin, which is everyone is at that point is pretty sure that John the Baptist is the Savior. And John the whole time is saying like, no, it's not. It's someone that's coming after me. It's not me. But they're like, oh no, it must be you. And even though he's telling them, no, I'm not. And when Yeshua, his cousin, comes to see him, that's when John the Baptist stops everything and says, I'm not worthy to touch his feet. Barb, you got something to add there? Can you help me out? I don't know that scripture.
Trying.
Did I get that
Trying.
right? Did I get that right? Barb.
I'm looking.
Oh. So this is the official moment that Yeshua's mission officially begins. Is the day that John the Baptist, he gets baptized, and this is the day the official mission begins. This is what is the documented, is the arrival of it. This is where it officially begins.
I produce unparalleled work and give most of it away charitably, as I try to be a benefactor of wisdom to all who seek me out. I offer my public teaching for free, my private teaching for donations, and my books at virtual cost. I can no longer provide my priceless, valuable, and unrivaled work for next to nothing. If you want to know the real facts, the genuine methods, and have access to the true knowledge, history, and how to apply it to improve your mind and spirit, then make a donation. What I provide in the final hour and a half of the Lost Years of Jesus class is available for donation only. Make a sincere offer and I will accept it. If you want access to the knowledge that facility colleges cannot provide, then give something to get it. What is offered the rest of this class is more details of Yeshua's time with the Essenes, the missing Gospels of Mary Magdalene, Judas, and Yeshua himself, and where they are and how this is known. The full Passion Play, what happened just before the crucifixion event and after that is verifiable and was omitted from the Gospels Testament by the Council of Nicea in 325 AD and has been lost to history as they intended. Where the documents supporting this are today and how they were discovered and how we know of them and how we might get them back. No, you cannot Google this knowledge. You cannot get it from YouTube or any quick and easy source. It's out there and can be attained on your own if you invest many years of dedicated study and searching to acquire it. Or, just like when you sign up for a class or pay your college tuition, you can get it from a qualified, reliable teacher who has it. All I ask for is a donation. If I have established my credibility with you and you have the capacity to know that I'm not some YouTube conspiracy theorist desperate for attention with fake and exaggerated content, then contact me direct. Ask and you shall receive.
How about a free book? This free workbook is a tutorial for changing your mind to change your life. From 6-time award-winning author and accredited specialist Scott Spacky, also going by Krishnanand. Learn about spiritual, psychological, anxiety, depression, addiction, and more. Change your mind and change your life. Free download at life-mind.com. That's life-mind.com.